Hey there, Ryan Kingslien here. What do you do when you sculpt? What's the first thing you start to think about? Now, in this video, what I want you to do is I want to show you how you think not muscles, but something else. Right? Don't think muscles. Don't ever think muscles. Because muscles do something right away. All these beefy muscles on this guy, they do something right away. They put our brain into a massively analytical mode. Massively analytical mode. And there's one part of us that really benefits from analysis, that loves analysis. And I'll tell you what, let me give you 3 parts of yourself. There is the visionary, right? Or the artist, you could say. There's the realist, the guy who pays the bills, right? And then there's the critic, who loves to analyze things, loves to compare things and get data. So as soon as you get in and you start saying, well, is that bicep right? I'm not quite sure. Then you start thinking about where it's inserting and all of that. And things start to go wrong. Don't think that in the beginning. There is a stage in which we need that level of analysis, but not in the beginning. Let me show you something, because really, are you happy with your artwork, with the level that you are right now? Could you be more dynamic? Could you push things further than maybe you have in the past? Could you create more freely? Like, if most of us could create more freely, for sure, and we could always create with more dynamicism, more dynamic aspects. But do we need to know muscles to be able to do that? In my hypnosis, no. Don't think muscles, think offsets. Think form, but primarily offsets. So I put together this really quick thing as an example for you and I to see how we can learn to use anatomy, artistic anatomy, so that we own it, it doesn't own us. So that those muscles and names and all of that don't hound us with all the information that we don't know. But we are able to use them, manipulate them, and make them do what we want them to do. So I started with just a simple sphere, and I just started to push and pull some forms to see if I could get anything interesting. And then, now, see with you live, do this live with you, see if we can get some cool forms to start to resolve out of that. Now, if I'm going to start to resolve this, if I'm going to start to do something interesting, knowing the muscles is important, but the very first thing I need to be thinking about, is what some people would call gesture. But I think gesture is really just it's a vague word at best. What I want to be focused on is some basic measurements and some simple offsets. Let me show you the things that would be offset from each other. More than the name, one of the most important things of understanding a muscle is just that the muscle's overall shape. Rotate this guy around. There's already a lot of form in here. And there's already some important offsets, right? So there's already an offset here. We've got a little bit of the knee being pushed out. We've got this kind of ramping back a little bit. So that's a really nice. We've got a little bit of an S shape as the lower leg is offset a little bit. We have a little bit of an S shape as the lower arm is offset a little bit. Same here. The lower arm is offset, pushed to the back. So now we're going to have offsets like the deltoid is going to come here, the tricep is going to be there, the bicep there, we're going to have the brachioradialis, and then somewhere we're going to have like a fist probably, which will probably come around like that. Or maybe we'll come and do the fist about like this. Okay. Then we're going to have an offset for the rectus femoris. We're going to have a little bit of an offset here for the biceps femoris as it comes into the knee, the brachioradialis. We're going to start to get into structures of the foot, gastrocnemius, structures of the foot. We're offsetting the pelvic area from the chest area. Going to push that forward. We're going to somehow or another find a neck in this beast with the deltoid off to the side, right? And then now we need a couple of tools to help lock us in. How do you start to discover where form goes? Well, you can learn all the anatomy you want, right? You can study scans left, right, and center. I mean, there's a ton of scans I've got. You could study all of this, but it all falls apart as soon as you put something in motion. Now we're in trouble. So there's one strategy that some people use. They're like, find the bony landmarks, right? You ever heard that? Find the bony landmarks, Ryan. Find the bony landmarks. Well, that's great, but you know, where? How? I mean, the shape's not even right here for the neck. So where is the clavicle going to be? The sternal notch, right? Or where's C7 going to be? How am I going to start to lock this down? You need to know more than just, hey, find the bony landmarks, Ryan. We need strategies. We need systems that will help us figure this stuff out. And the cool thing is they're there already. They're already there. So if I'm going to be looking at this, if I'm going to try to figure this one out, then I'm going to try to find just the bony landmarks, you know, that are useful. Like the bony landmarks that I can actually find, the ones that are relatively straightforward. So ASIS, pubic symphysis. ASIS and pubic symphysis. If that doesn't work, we do have a knee, and knee is a great bony landmark. We have a patella here, and so we can take this patella and we go down a little bit to the tibial tuberosity. Just kind of assume that goes out. And then we come from this tibial tuberosity over here to the great trochanter, and we can say that's two heads. That's going to be two heads. So I don't know if the rest of this is all worked out or not, but I have a whole proportion of measurements. This is one of the things that's really important, right? So I said one of the first things you got to know is you got to know measurements. So I have a simple 8-head proportion figure that's always on my mind. I've memorized these proportions. They're always there. And they're all based on one head. So halfway, pubic symphysis, great trochanter, that's 4 heads. Down to the bottom, that's 8 heads. Right here at 6 heads, or 2 heads up, 2 heads down, tibial tuberosity, and the patella comes and connects there. Line of the tibia. The foot itself, the ankle, is a little less than half a head. Little less than half. About 1 head up from pubic symphysis, that's when you get a belly button. 1 head up from there, that's when you get nipple lines. 1 head up from there, that's when you get the head, right? So the neck is less than half a head. Half a head is a really long neck. Come out here from the clavicle, we go out about 0.75 to 0.8 or so, and that's the clavicle to the acromion process. The pubic symphysis to the ASIS, that's about 1/3 of a head. And then there's about 1/3 of a head down to the ischial spines and 1/3 of a head up to the top of the ilium. This is the anatomy that you and I need to know, because I'm going to put that to work right now. I'm going to make all of that stuff work. So I know tibial tuberosity to great trochanter, that's 2 heads. And then I'm going to be able to say, well, I know where the pubic symphysis is, so I know exactly where the ASIS, I know how far up they're going to be, because I'm going to establish this measurement in 2 heads. And then if I'm lucky, I can even go from pubic symphysis on up to the neck, which this model doesn't rotate a ton, so that, or compress actually would be the problem, is if it was compressed on itself. So I'm going to be able to figure all that stuff out. Let's do this. Move. Grab that knee and just come in somewhere in the middle of this. Somewhere in the middle, and then I'm going to drag it out a little bit, because that should be where the tibial tuberosity is. The patella is not the measurement. The patella is not the measurement. Alright, so this is 2.35 heads. I come up in here into preference, transpose, and I'm going to set this to 2 heads. or calibration distance of 2. This is a ZBrush feature. It is a godsend for us. So I set this to 2, and I have every measurement I need at this point. I do need to put a little landmark in here, right? I need to put a little landmark in there. So how can I do that? Well, that's easy. I can either sculpt, or hey, why don't I just insert a little sphere? That's kind of neat. And then I can come over here, look at it from a backside look, and try to find out what's the angle of the hip. And using my ZBrush features, I'm just going to press Control, drag this over. Now I've done a tricky little thing here, and I'm not sure it's quite worked out, but I've rotated the model. I thought I've rotated the model, right, to the angle of view that I wanted. So, not quite there. Let's look at it from below. Yeah, and I did this by eye, so you probably won't even see it just yet. There. Let me see if that's accurate. Now, once I've got these kind of in place, I'm just going to split them out. Split hidden, and there you go. Now I can use transparency, which is really cool. So I can say, yeah, is that about halfway? Or is that side view? Let me look at it from below. And I like that. That's good for a side view. So I've established markers. I'm starting to get measurements intact. Starting to get my measurements. I know from that patella there, it's about 2 heads. Now let's check how far apart are these guys. And I don't need this other tool. I can just turn this one off. Let's just gather from one to the other. Just click and drag, right? And they're about 1 unit. Do you see that up there? Up there at the top. That's 1 head. Beautiful. Perfect. The ASIS are about 1 head apart. So we have managed to get great volume intact there. We got lucky. We got really lucky in that particular case. But now we need to get in and get that pubic symphysis. And that pubic symphysis is going to be dropped down from here a little bit. Now the cool thing is I've got this little axis. So this doesn't have to be in world view, which is definitely not. I'm just going to click the red one. And then Control, click and drag down, but while pressing Shift. That's going to constrain it to a view. And then let's just dial this back until we get to about 1/3 or 0.33. That's pretty great right there, I think. So this is helping me triangulate ASIS to ASIS, and then the pubic symphysis is going to be right in between. Right in between these guys. So let's turn this in. Side view. Press Shift. Or we could scale. However you want to do it. I'm going to look at this and just bring that guy right in there. Beautiful. Okay. ASIS, great trochanter. Now we're ready to go. Now we can lock on that ASIS and we can take our measurements up. So ASIS, remember, this is a 4 head. That's a halfway marker for our character. So we're just going to pull this on up 4 heads, and that's going to give us the top. Or we can go to, let's say 3 heads. That's a nipple line. So we're going to go about 3.5, and that'll be the sternal notch. Watch this. Take this up. Yeah, I'm getting worried. That's high. So 4 heads is like right there. Wow, that's pretty crazy. But that's what it's showing me. Let's move this in a little bit. Okay, let's check. This is the beauty of it too. Now, a couple of things. When we're doing measurements like this, everything's based on that first measurement. So what do I do if that first measurement's wrong? Well, I have to adjust everything, right? So we have this fit phase. We have this fit phase that does happen. But let's just go with the flow here. See if we can make this work. That head is going to be right there. Down a little. There. Perfect. Okay, that head's going to be right there. Now, what about these arms? We got a decision to make. Do we refit this so that it fits the shoulder? So would we want to instead transition this measurement and say, well, let's reset this, and now this is actually 4 heads. Maybe that's going to be 4 heads, and then that means that right about here, that's going to be the neck, 2.5. So 1 and 2.5. Maybe that's going to work, right? Or maybe we just do lousy math, and I just didn't get my math right to begin with. Who knows? But maybe we want to adjust that, maybe not. I'm going to stick to this because I want to show you how cool this can be. Move this out a little bit, and I'm going to reset that at 2. Cool. Okay, and then pull that out again. There we go. Now, look how rough and loose that is. Would you ever let your sculpts be this rough, this loose? When you get fluent in the medium, you don't care about structure, right? You speak English, or maybe you speak Hindi, or do you remember grammar? I remember I used to teach English in Prague, and I came back to the United States, and I thought one of the jobs I might get is teaching English. And I realized there's a really big difference between teaching English in America versus teaching it abroad. So one of the first questions, they've got this grammar question. I'm like, I don't know. Because I speak this every day, you know. That's not the way this works. I don't need to know all the grammar. So about 2.5 up, that's going to be where the shoulders are. We're going to move these shoulders up. I'm going to turn dynamic off. Check it. Check it. Right, that's fairly good. That's decent enough. I've got some volume in there ready for me to go. Okay. Now I can come in and just, why don't we, right? Start to offset the shoulder. I'm keeping this super vague though. And I kind of think it's important to do that. I'm going to show you some ways to find structure. But your artwork will be better if you can handle a little bit more uncertainty, a little bit more confusion in it, because it gives it a chance to develop a life. Just going to flatten that a bit. Now, there's a reason why I did it like this. I'm actually leaving a plane in here. I am leaving a planar structure. This has anatomical implications. What I've done right now is basically create the spine of the scapula. Spine of the scapula serves as a breaking point. So this is the back, and then above the spine of the scapula, the trapezius wraps around to the clavicles. So if I really wanted to be specific, in a matter of minutes, not even minutes, in a matter of seconds, I can have the entire shoulder girdle outlined. Just doing this fluently, freely, not because I know the trapezius and, I know the 3 different parts of the trapezius. No, it's because, and in fact, I learned all of these muscles before I learned how to simplify them. I want to show you how to think of them in simple ways and then maybe deep dive into it, because my process was much slower. It took me much longer. So we're going to have spine and scapula up to the acromion process over to the clavicles around the side, and then the trapezius is coming up and wrapping around, because it connects to the clavicle and it connects to the spine and scapula, right? And then we'll have some sort of neck fall in there. How do you divide a neck? Super easy. You look for the hyoid bone. And then you look for the jaw, and you just basically draw these lines. Here, 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 wherever. And then you put the larynx in, and if it's a man, you put a little Adam's apple, and then you're done. It's super simple. Super simple. Now, to do this, we're going to look at it from above, to do this part that I'm talking about, and maybe I'll get rid of this part here. Because the shoulder girdle has a very specific form, and it doesn't really change that much. Doesn't change that much, but you've got spine of the scapula coming into the acromion process, right, at the end of the spine of the scapula, and it kind of dips in like this, and then the clavicles come in and they do this little S shape, this sparrow shape. They wrap around like that. But one thing we need to know is, what's the measurement of these guys? What's the measurement? So we could say this is about 1.5 plus heads. That's a measurement of how long is that, and then how do you go from there? So I'm going to go like 1.75, 1.6. I'm going to go somewhere in that range. Let's set the measurement first. So transpose, pull it out, 1.6. I'm good. So I'm thinking acromion process is pretty awesome right in there. Pull back spine of the scapula, pull back spine of the scapula. Well, you know what? They stop at a certain point, and the shoulder girdle in the back bows in, because now you've got spine here reaching up to the head. So why don't we just quickly, because now we've got a distance here. What's the distance? 1.6. Where's our halfway point? I'm going to look down the model. My spine is right there. Not here, not here. It's right there. So that means that I need to put it right there. Maybe a bit better to use a standard brush. There. We got a nice little line working for us. Hopefully that line goes in between these guys that we established earlier. So we connected here. Let's just drag it on down. See how this is? It's a system. We are basically this machine, this crazy, beautiful machine, and it's just a system that I'm implementing right now. There we go. All right, let's get the clavicle. So we got a little bit of our bow shape in there. I feel like I really want to dive that out. Don't move that too much, but I really need to bow the shoulders in. So, and then it's going to come around. Deltoid, the clavicular head of the deltoid, adding volume, and then dives in as you lose the deltoid, and then it becomes just bone. So that's a shape that we're going to be working on. There we go. And let's pull that in and pull that out. Pull that in and out. Okay, and I want to drop it down. So that it is on par with the back. There we go. The back, we might be looking at it and we're like, oh man, there's all kinds of nasty going on here, right? One of the things about being a professional is that you just don't sweat the small stuff. You just aren't involved in the small stuff. It's going to get and resolve itself. One of the things about being at the amateur or being at the beginner level, you worry about everything, right? Did I do this right? Did I do it the right way? Is it done the right way? And then when you get to a pro, you're like, man, I sweated way too much. Way too much. So if you feel like you need to be concerned, don't think about muscles, because that's what worry does. Worry puts our brain in muscle. What we want to be thinking about is, well, there is a little bit of a roundness in there, so why don't I just put the roundness of the rib cage so the guy can breathe? That's it. But see, as soon as you do that, you start getting into all these other modes. So what's the roundness and how does it interact with the spine? So you may not be aware, but there's the 10th rib here, and then we've come into the Erector Spinae, gap this a little bit, then you go into the lumbar section, and then not only that, but now you're starting to have effects from the ilium and the hip area. These are all the things that I want to be showing you. But when you start to fix things that you're worried about, you start to create more problems, because that's just the nature of this. So be mindful. I'm not fixing that back because I'm not having a conversation about the ilium. Screw it. I'm trying to focus on this shape and whether or not that's accurate. That's it. And on top of that, I'm having a hard time seeing it because the neck isn't clearly indicated. So that's my problem. Get that neck clearly indicated. So why don't I just mask this stuff off, right? Let's just mask off what we know we like. And then we come in here with the clay buildup, because this is the brush that's designed for this. Doesn't care what your topology is. Doesn't care what your name is. Doesn't care what you've done in life. It's like, hey, I'm here to sculpt through anything and everything, and I'm damn good at my job. And it is damn good at its job. The really great thing about it is that it's building a column. This is not what the standard brush would do. Standard brush would go crazy with this topology. But this is behaving quite classy. Okay, I'm going to look at it from the back. I'm going to try to build just a bit of a plane. There. Yeah, just a bit of a plane. Boom, boom, boom. Now I'm adding a little bit of volume and a little bit of volume. Start to establish the egg shape. Maybe I need to add a little bit of volume in here for a chin. And I'm thinking, in large part offsets. I'm not thinking about egg too much. I'm just thinking like forehead offset, chin offset, back of the head offset. And there we go. My topology's not right. There's a million things wrong. But there's also a million things right. And we've started down the path. Let's check our head measurement. Doesn't mean that that's one head, right? And it's not. It's too big. So that happens, but that's why we check. Trust but verify. Almost there. I'm going to dial these sides of the face in a little bit. And now we're starting to get somewhere. Now, a lot of time, I'm going a little slow here. A lot of times this happens really fast, but I'm breaking everything down so that you see every single step, as many steps as I can possibly indicate. So now, let's do something, because we have a large part of measurements established. Literally, I mean, I'm pretty sure we have, let's double check it, but I'm pretty sure we got 4 heads. Yeah, that's 4. We've got shoulders out there. That's kind of nice. I think we might drag that in a little bit, but it's not bad. We have the length of the leg. Okay, we have our positioning for the great trochanters. And from our great trochanters, the only other thing I might do is let's just get this leg going. Yeah, all right. That's where the tibial tuberosity is. And then we've got that much more to go. We've also got that much more to go. So why don't we get this leg? So I'm going to use snake hook. And in using snake hook, such a beautiful brush, I'm going to also get the gesture and the offsets of the leg. Right? Doesn't have to be much, right? It doesn't look good here. But I have the essential elements. So let's check tibial tuberosity, and that needs to go a little bit more. So large, and move that on down. That should be sufficient. Yes. Okay, let's check it on this side. Tibial tuberosity. There we go. So we need to move that up a bit. Yeah, all right. So, snake hook. And let's pull this up a little bit. And we can pull this down. Actually, this is now getting into this mode of offsets and overlaps. So why don't we just start that process? I'm going to smooth that. I'm inflating. I'm inflating in general terms. Not sure where anything's necessarily going. It's just all in general terms. Could check our arm measurements as well. Come up here, down. 2 heads is too far. About 1.5 is going to be the olecron process. So that's the olecron process. And then we got another one there. So this is too much. Why don't we dial in snake hook? And it's of course because we dragged it down, right? Or we dragged it up, I should say. Check it again. It's going to be essentially about 2.5, 3, and 3.5. So I think I'm fine with that. Elbow, styloid process, and the hand. Yep, looks good. Elbow, styloid process, down a little bit. And then let's drag that down a little bit more, and we'll start making a fist. And offset that inwards slightly. There you go. Now, last thing for this step, you've seen this start to evolve. Do I need to know muscles to know what happens next? It's great. It's useful to know the muscles, but again, they're the expensive route to go. They're a very expensive route for you to go to improve your abilities. And that's cool. Spend the money, spend the time, but you can do this faster. And I'm talking to somebody who has spent that time and realized, man, I still needed to know the stuff I'm going to share with you right now. I still needed to know. I couldn't get around some of this. The only thing I might do right now is try to find out ASIS. And let's come in there. Okay. I'm going to try to pull this down. Yeah, start to move it down towards that great trochanter. Which, at a certain point, I was thinking was the ASIS. We can rotate these and see if we can find... Let's come in here. And there we go. There we go. There, now I've pulled it up so that what we were originally kind of thinking might be a great trochanter, ASIS, it's now much better as an ASIS. And the reason why I needed to do this, you can see my knowledge, I ended up making a mistake anyways. But the reason why I needed to do this is because the offset for the rectus femoris is going to come. The rectus femoris is going to insert below the ASIS. It's going to come below that. Okay, so get this up to the pubic bone. There you go. All right, there we go. Looking good, huh? The offset from the rectus femoris into that ASIS over to the knee and then this hamstring. This is such a cool offset for us to place. It's such a cool gesture to establish, right? You see this in comic book characters, that massive form right there. Now we're going to continue that. So there's a couple of offsets to be mindful of. There is the rectus femoris, and it's offset because underneath it is the vastus intermedius. So there's two muscles. That's why that's the dominant form. You know where the vastus intermedius is, and you'll have a better sense of where that form is pushed out. That's where anatomy gets useful. Now, biceps femoris. So ASIS, we've got our ilium, pubic symphysis, ischial spines, and the sacrum coming out, right? And then there we go, great trochanter coming in, feeling that, and then we happen down here. Okay, now, the hamstring is originating from your sit bones. So we need to drop that forward. But then the gluteus maximus is coming a little bit from the ilium, a little bit from the sacrum, and then it's going to be wrapping around to a little bit like a quarter of the way down the humor, or the femur, the leg bone. And then up here where we were going to have, let's see, the ASIS, we're going to have the TFL. These offsets are crucial. Not only that, but if you saw the clay pelvic video, you saw how the gluteus medius was offset and the gluteus maximus was inset. Out, in. Doing these simple offsets, we're going to really quickly be able to make short work of anatomy without really understanding where everything is inserting or originating. We don't need to know the ins and outs of where they originate. We just need to know where they're headed. All right, there we go. We're going to drop this gluteus maximus a bit. It's going to round itself out. I'm going to use clay buildup, and there we go. I'm going to start to create a little bit of form here for the vastus lateralis. It's going to be a massive form, and the biceps femoris does sneak in there, but the dominant form, that's vastus lateralis. So I need to make sure that I'm sculpting that. I'm going to have the rectus femoris, or the gluteus medius, I should say, come in. But in order to start to make sense of this, I need to really start to dive in and create the pubic arch. Notice I'm not dividing this. I'm not even dealing with dividing, but you know, I can for you. I can, but sometimes I'll leave it empty like that. It might be easier for you to see this if I do that though. Okay, TFL flows around to the rectus femoris. The gluteus medius. Offset that with the maximus. Sacrum. Dive that in. The gluteus maximus on the other side is a totally different behavior because on the left leg it's being pulled taut. On the right leg, totally opposite, it's being kind of compressed. So its form is going to be different. So we're going to come in here. We're going to just try to find some gluteus medius. I'm just going to try to find some maximus. And again, I find that by adding a little volume and subtracting. There we go. And I'm thinking about this gluteus maximus as a tire. Then I'll come in and say, try to find my TFL. Wrap it around, and a little high point for the rectus femoris and vastus intermedius, abdominals, vastus lateralis or medialis, and then we come in and we start to build a little bit of form for our vastus lateralis. And then, of course, build a little bit of form for our biceps femoris and our semitendinosus. And we start to develop these offsets, which we largely notice in these views, side views. I'm looking at front and I'm looking at side. That's where we largely notice these views. You can even just use a move brush for most of this, right? Just using the move brush. Once I know the offsets, it starts to create the gesture all by itself. Now we come in. Gotta sculpt the package. It's a package deal, guys. Just don't have to get detailed, right? Okay. Belly. Starting to set up. Not a muscle, but I'm setting up this down plane from pubic symphysis to the belly button. I'm setting up a down plane, so that means I add volume here. Okay, and then the next place I'm going to add volume is somewhere around the 8th rib. Somewhere like that. So you can see this interesting pattern that develops. And this 8th rib becomes a really major form. The next place I'll add is where basically the pectoralis starts to really shine. And I start to set up a nice simple plane. Almost like a mechanical piece, a breastplate that gets added to it. Not worrying about insertion, not worrying about origins or anything like that. Because first I just need to be able to do this. I need to be able to accomplish something. Get the sides of the rib. The rib bellows out towards the bottom. Not the top, towards the bottom. And then we can start to pull that into the external obliques. Get some compression in there. Pull it down to the belly. Maybe all of this just needs to go up even more. I need that. Focus on your 8th rib, though. The 8th rib is a major form determiner. Looking good. Looking good. But now we really need to, in order to understand it, we need to get ourselves into the back. So now we need to start to separate. So we've got scapula, right? And the scapula, we don't think about this, but the scapula is like in the front. We've got the breasts in the front, we've got the scapula in the back. And what these do is these add these like plates that sit above the rib cage. Both of them add plates that sit above the rib cage and move independent of the rib cage. And then below that, we follow the 10th rib. And then we follow that into the lumbar section, but you can split the lumbar section in half. And that's where form changes. Let me show you. I'm going to follow the 10th. First, I'm going to kind of establish a bend or a separation. That's going to be the first thing. I'm going to flow up and then start to round it. See that? I could tell you the ribs, I could tell you the muscles, the Erector Spinae, all of that nonsense, the external obliques. But if you know that, and you're a doctor, and you don't know that the lumbar pitches in, and then it pitches, the thoracic pitches out, and then that's picked up by the 10th rib, and then it's also compounded by the Erector Spinae, where the Erector Spinae is actually two parts. One of them is down here, but this part kind of compresses and changes form, and we have this nice little break in planes there, and then all that's wrapped around. And you know, if you don't know these form changes, then you're SOL. Follow the 10th rib around. This is a line that comes through the body. Follow it around into the external oblique. These lines are you and I's lifeblood. They're what create dynamicism, is these lines. If we don't have these lines, we don't really have anything. Now, how am I going to do the external, or not the external oblique, but the lats and the back muscles, right? Because if you look in the anatomy book, you got these big lats. Well, the lats are nothing. I mean, they're important, but you got to do specific exercises to get lats to work. A lot of this is basically the serratus anterior, which is coming in from the bottom of the scapula. So when I come in here, I'm trying to find out where's the scapula. That's the edge of the scapula. And so I now know that basically from here, this is going to round. Not just because the trapezius is there, but because the serratus anterior is there. So I found it. I just come in and I go right into the middle of that armpit, and I just start to round. Like that. Yeah. Like that. And then, this is always troublesome, right? But look, I've set myself up for success in so many ways. So many ways. I've not even touched armpits, but I've set myself up for success. So I don't know, maybe I can just mask that out. And throw it up. Maybe, right? Come in here and start to see if I can pull some more form. Oh, wrong brush. I was wondering why that was behaving a little different. Serratus anterior, pull them around a little bit. Bicep. Add a little bit of hit here for the clavicle. Not the clavicle, but the clavicular portion of the deltoid. Let's come in here. Yeah. Okay. Throw on the clavicular portion, the acromial portion. Let's get that bicep as a plane that moves. Starts to really establish the front plane, and it's moving inside, and the deltoid moves above, and the pectoralis moves above. These are the overlaps that you and I need to start to focus on. We need to know these overlaps, especially here, right? Tricep, but then there's the scapular portion of the deltoid. which overlaps that. Then the medial part of the tricep. And look at this. We're starting to actually do it. Let's give this guy like some strength in that neck. And some jaw. Sort of pull this stuff in and see if I can, yeah, there we go. I'll get the pecs to really come out, and let's really dance that. That's nice. And really build up some volume there as the scapular portion of the deltoid, and then tricep. There's a ton of stuff in there for us to work on and to start to define. So much. But we have started this process. I'm going to come in, let it save. And what? We've been at this, what? 45 minutes? One of the most important things I want to really really impart to you is just how important that first half hour was of getting our measurements, right? How important that was. There's so much. It's so important to get all of that stuff kind of out of the way so that now you and I can go in and real quickly start to make this guy kind of happen. So we come in with the clay brush and we start to do things like lower our depth in bed from 20 to, let's say, 5. And we start to pattern this a little bit, right? Try to find out where's that 8th rib. Maybe we need to add a little bit more volume right in here. We need to carve in for the sternum. And we start to really get some of these smaller overlaps. And just go back and forth over these until we've got them. Smaller brushes, smaller sizes, everything gets smaller and smaller, and you smooth out, and you're constantly adjusting and manipulating. Now I'm going to stop this here with you because we focused on the torso, and the torso is something that you can understand, that you can relate to. Most people know all the muscles in the torso. Most people know it even having studied no anatomy whatsoever. So you can get here. You can get here with a model. Just pull it out and start to go through these procedures. So remember this procedure of measure. Look at your offsets. Look at your overlaps. Right? Look at your moo. Yeah? There's so much more I want to do to this model. Maybe I'll do this again and add more parts and more pieces to it. But I'm going to leave it just like this. And my challenge to you is do this. Do this. Get it this far. Take it further. I've given you everything you need at this point. The only thing that will help you further is just knowing more about these overlaps. Knowing more about the offsets, so the brachioradialis. Then how not the brachioradialis, but how the extensor carpi brevis peeks out here, but actually becomes part of the extensor digitorum. And how that becomes one form there. That's going to be the next thing that helps level you up. And that's what I'm doing in the class. That's what this sculpting course is all about. It's about unleashing the sculptor in you, unleashing the anatomist, unleashing the artist. We're going to tackle it all. And we're going to get you sculpting like a mean machine, just creating things freely. We're going to spend a lot of time focused on you doing the work. All right, take care of yourselves, and I hope to see you see your work in that course. Take care. I'll talk to you soon.